Opening the South Maui Community Plan Advisory Committee meeting at 5:32 p.m. Can we start with a roll call?
Yes. Chair Rob Weltman, Vice Chair Daniel Kanahele, Tova Callender, Vernon Kalanikau, Randall Leach, Mike Moran, Cody Nemeth, Gary Passon, Kyoki Feltzer, Jennifer Sullivan, and Brian Ward. Everett Dowling and Lehuanani Huddleston Hapoka are excused. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have quorum. Velina mai ina lalo ke komike o lalo o kai ulo no ka papa ho lala no Maui hama. Velina mai no ho e ka po e o ke ena ho lala o ke kala no o Maui. Me ka lahu o Maui ne. E ho ama ho ana kako ina pala aina o Maui hama pau. Me na pala mana o koa pau I ke ala. First, a little housekeeping. So our topics tonight are a review of the descriptive text about the South Maui subareas. That's sections 3.4 to 3.5 of the plan draft. We finished 3.3 a little while ago. And also all the policies, which are sections 2.1 to 2.5. To propose a change to decision we have made, you make a motion to amend something previously adopted, as in section 12 of Robert's Rules. And it needs a second to start discussion. An example of a motion to amend is, I move to amend the second sentence of page 35 to state the southern boundary of. Since there are a couple of agenda items and it might take much of the evening to get to the second one, we will accept testimony on either of the two of the evening's topics, either at the beginning of the meeting or just before the particular topic. Testimony will be limited to 3 minutes with 1 minute to respond to follow-up questions. Any other housekeeping items? Daniel.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to express my concern and some community members' concerns based on testimony, written testimony I've seen regarding not being able to have public testimony given virtually. And we've been set up to do that in the past at the Malcolm Center, but at the end of, or during last week's meeting, that was planning brought up that we may not have the ability to have any more public testimony virtually. So I think public testimony throughout this process is critical, and we can't afford to not be able to hear the voices of our community, especially at this stage as we're coming to the end of our Cpac process. Maybe, I don't know. But I just want to hear from planning what can be done to set up these meetings, whether we meet here in the Kihei Community Center or whether we meet in the Malcolm Center, to have to allow folks to testify virtually as we have done before. So if planning want to dip into that again and re-clarify that, and maybe there's something we can do to make it happen, that we can have testimony online again. Thank you, Chair.
For the virtual testimony, we were working with Akaku, who had the capability, because of 2 of their staff members, who had the capability to run a hybrid meeting. Because those staff members have left, Akaku no longer has the staffing capability to run a hybrid meeting. As you all experienced last time, there was a lot of going in and out. If we lose connectivity on a hybrid meeting for more than half an hour, the meeting has to be canceled. We do really support public testimony. There can also be written testimony. And the people we would like to hear from the most for the South Maui Community Plan are the South Maui community members who should live pretty close to where we are meeting, as it is required that we have these meetings in South Maui. We really tried to do hybrid. It was very challenging, and the sound quality wasn't good. It is not possible with the current staffing to have hybrid meetings.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Karen. And I know you kind of said that at the last meeting, but I thought it was important that it be brought up again in the public venue. I'm just wondering if there is a way for a kaku to contract for those services that they are missing, which had enabled them to host these meetings virtually. And if we can contact Akaku to see if they can, if planning has, I don't know, if we can make an extra effort to contact Akaku to see if they can find someone to replace the two guys who are making it possible for us to hold virtual meetings. And I don't know if there are any other sentiments that the committee wants to express on the subject. I think it would be good to do so now.
Mike?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I too got a lot of complaints from our community, and when I did try and mention that, well, the meetings are held in the evening in the community. In theory, that should make it simpler for residents, and the answer I got back to that was, well, that's fine, except I've got family, I've got dinner to make. You know, it's very easy to say, oh, just show up here and sit there for however long I have to wait. Unacceptable. And other comments I got was, if it's a financial situation, don't we have $1 billion budget? Can't the county administration come up with additional funds to pay someone to do it? And I just expressed what Daniel did. Well, we'll bring it up at the beginning of the meeting and ask if there is some possible way. But there was quite a bit of outrage. And in addition, I won't swear to this, but I recall at the beginning when we were asking for this, that was one of the things I thought we were told by planning, well, we'll definitely do it at the more important meetings toward the end. And that's what I expressed to members of my community. Now, maybe I misunderstood that, but I thought that's what I heard. So thank you for allowing me to pitch in. Thank you.
Kyoki?
Thank you, Chair. I too express concerns about the incapability of finishing off these meetings virtually. This process is a community process. It's super important that we include, all that can be included. I know it's not cost, Mike, because there's been organizations offered to cover costs. So if the reasoning at this point is staffing, that may be a good suggestion that Daniel had as far as like just outsourcing for the few remaining meetings that we hopefully have. We were more than patient in the beginning to try and get this virtual capability. People were expressing, I know probably every one of us had people behind us saying, when are you going to have the virtual? When are you going to have the virtual? And we finally did in spurts, but I just don't think it's a good deal to have it go away at this point. So that's my mono on that. Mahalo.
Anyone else? Any other housekeeping? Daniel?
So I understand our deadline is, correct me if I'm wrong, planning, is October 18th is that's our last meeting date. So, if we don't get everything done by October 18th, and there's a little bit left, would it be that hard to extend it another week to the end of the month, which would be October 25th? Are you contemplating that, given the speed at which sometimes we move? And the fact also that out of the extension period, we lost 2 full months of we were not meeting for 2 full months. And so actually, if we were meeting on a regular basis, this would be mid-July, and we would have up to October 18th. Instead of now, we're kind of behind the 8 ball with less time to cover a lot of ground, and very important ground, because we're going to go through everything one more time. And so that means everyone in the community, besides the Cpac, has a chance to participate in the process. So are you preparing for that possibility of needing to extend just a little bit more? I know a lot of us are busy, and
Yes.
we probably have places to go. Oh, thank you.
Any other housekeeping? Okay, so opening for public testimony on either of the 2 topics for today, which are the sub-area descriptions and the policies. First testifier. Please state which of those topics you'll be speaking about and your name if you're comfortable with doing that.
Can you hear me? Don't start counting yet. Aloha. I'm here to testify about North Kihei-Mauka. My name is Randy Wagner. You may remember me as an architect active in the KCA. My home and heart has been in Kihei for over 30 years, and I'm very familiar with our town and its strengths and challenges. North Kihei-Mauka can be a disaster, or it can be a benefit to our quality of life in Kihei. We have many challenges. Currently, we suffer from lack of housing for locals, poor infrastructure, congested traffic, storm flooding, mud inundation, fire danger, inadequate exits in case of disaster, loss of wetlands, ocean pollution, and rising sea level. It is possible to help mitigate these problems in North Kihei-Mauka. I've worked with others, including KCA, to create preconditions policies that express the values and priorities of the community that North Kihei-Mauka must meet. Ours is a long-term vision that will be years in the making, but it gives us goals to achieve. Too often in Kihei, we're dealing with piecemeal developments that have not contributed to the betterment of our community. On South Kihei Road, we don't even have the basics like sidewalks. Here's a list of the precondition policies. You have a copy in front of you. Policy 1, we need a working group representing local entities such as housing experts, cultural experts, environmentalists, community groups, etc., to determine what the specific needs of our community are and to think about how we can fill those needs. Policy 2, we need a comprehensive master plan that expressly responds to those needs while taking into consideration many important factors. Policy 3, we need a watershed management plan that looks at the big picture, including adjacent ranch land, and provides solutions and creative ways to contain runoff. Policy 4, we need a cultural preservation plan that values and protects the archaeological and cultural elements and provides for their continued usage by practitioners. Policy 5, we need to collect a road that is continuous from Lapoa Street to Veterans Highway to allow for relief of traffic congestion on Pialani Highway and gives us a disaster escape route. Policy 6, we need to be sure that this area is dedicated to providing affordable housing for our Kama'aina residents who cannot afford to live here under the current situation. All of the above requires thoughtful planning, something we have not had in Kihei. Without the acceptance of these precondition policies, I express opposition to this land being developed. We do not want to see business as usual development. Our problems are a result of that approach. We want to see a healthy community grow over decades that has a vision we can embrace because it is helping Kihei and the people who love it here. You volunteers are in a very powerful position to help in solving our pressing problems. I advise you to accept these precondition policies. Additionally, I advise you to return the designation of Pialani Promenade back to residential. Thank you for your service.
Thank you, Andy. Any clarifying questions from the committee members? Gary?
Thank you, Randy, for those amazingly clear and well thought out concepts. I'd like to ask the chair if we could make Randy a resource for this evening, because I think there's a number of areas where I think she could provide some additional input.
Any objections? Okay, can you stay for be as resource person? Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Kyoke has a question.
Hello, Randy. Mahalo
Aloha.
for coming. Thank you for this. It's very well put. I really don't have a question. If you followed when it was changed to the land use designation was changed from residential, I was in favor of the residential because I too believe that it would be less traffic, higher home count per business, and the businesses that would be allowed would be smaller.
Are you talking
So-
about the Pialani Promenade?
Yes, yes. So thank you. I agree. Stay on as a resource, please. Thank you.
Okay.
Any other clarifying questions? Cody?
Hi,
Hi, Cody.
Marlo. So I remember the last time that this was kind of brought up and I was here. Some were saying that it was very important that there was some sort of accommodations for the high school that would be above Pialani Highway. Some sort of, so that they wouldn't always have to cross the highway and go to the store or whatever, something like that. What would you say to that?
Oh, I think that if residential allows for the kinds of needs that a high school person might have, like if they want to go to the store, they want to get a bite to eat, there's neighborhood centers, there is small business allowed in residential. I think it's really inappropriate to have a small town center next to the high school when Kihei is our small town center, and we don't want to take away from that. We want that to remain viable. And I think that all the traffic would be inappropriate adjacent to a high school to have a commercial center there going in and out constantly, pulling people off the highway who aren't even part of the community. I totally think that a high school person can find what they need.
So we're actually not discussing the land use designations today. We will be getting back to that in 2 weeks, but
Yeah, I just added that little thing in the end.
yeah.
Just because I wanted you to understand that I really believe in the residential component with the support services needed for residences allowed. But I do not agree there's nothing in the North Kihei Mauka that's a small town center. We just don't need a small town center. We have a small town. We have neighborhood centers, but what we need is housing.
Any other clarifying questions? Mike?
Randy, I'll make this brief because if you're going to be a resource, you'll be able to give us information. But on your testimony for North Kihei, what you're stating is if your suggestion is if we don't accept these policies, that there should be no development up there. Is that correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Any other clarifying questions? Thank you. Next testifier.
Aloha, I'm Nick Drance, founder of themaui.miracle.org. I've been involved in county politics for getting progressives on the council. My goal with that website, The Maui Miracle, is when voters show up to the polls and their wishes create what is in our government and determine what happens on Maui. Quickly, the initial comments I heard about public participation. The county council has had countless Zoom meetings. People do it all the time with hundreds of participants, so I don't think that should be too difficult. I didn't have time to go through the whole agenda thing. Normally, I know there's, I'm accustomed with county council, these 3 minutes on each agenda item. You're only going to get 3 minutes from me because I have to consolidate my comments. But the previous speaker, and I think probably the majority of others that you'll hear from today, are going to say, why would we do anything that doesn't maintain the quality of life for existing residents? So anything that we build should support our quality of life here. So I read in this thing, let's see, what was on top of page 91, more residents to spread the cost of additional infrastructure and so forth. And this thing about adding more and more and more people, which begets, that one problem begets the next. And it just snowballs into a crazy thing. All this development that we're talking about is for people that don't even live here yet. And the usage of the word development is a mainland definition of development. The word development used in that regard has absolutely nothing to do with Maui. We are a very small island. We are the most remote populated island on the planet Earth. And at least this place should be spared. But like I say, my guiding light is we shouldn't be doing anything that doesn't benefit the people that live here already. Now, I don't know why anybody would argue about that. As far as beyond that, we've got a Maui county-wide plan, island plan, there's a mission statement, core principles. Those things, people laugh at that. Those things are not followed. Focus Maui Nui was one of the most comprehensive studies of public opinion here. That's ignored. I got a copy of it from Maui Economic Board, and anybody who wants it, they've tracked down the electronic copy of it. So if you want that, that's what residents want. And they wanted a semi-rural, small-town atmosphere. Everybody does. Why would I want more traffic? What do I need more stores for? What do I need more houses for people that don't live here yet? Where are our priorities? So just to wrap up very quickly, oops, is that me? Oh, it's me. Just to wrap up very quickly, government is here to serve the people. And government represents the people and not any other business interests or philosophies or something like that. Let's stick to the mission statement, core principles, and let's get a guiding vision that relates to putting residents first. No matter what we do, the litmus test should be, does it benefit the quality of life of existing residents? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any clarifying questions for the testifier? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next testifier.
Thank you.
Aloha mai kākou, waualina ala kulaloyo vetter, no honua ulavau, no hamakua poko, a me hamakua loa. Noho ko'u ohana ma'ane ma Maui nei ma ko Hawaii pai aina. Ma mua o ka hiki ana mai o na kanaka e. Aloha, my name is Lena Ala Kulaloyo Vetter, and my descendancy comes from Honua'ula, and I'll be talking about Honua'ula, Hamakua Poko, and Hamakua Loa. I am the vice president of Keoho o Honua'ula Inc., which is a Kanako Iwi established and managed organization. As the vice president of Keoho o Honua'ula, I was shocked and disturbed when I found out that our aina are pu'uhonua in Mo'oloa, located at 6597 McKenna Road and designated as TMK 21005-123, parcel 123, was a topic of debate for this committee at your September 6th Cpac meeting. The mission of Keoho is embedded in Kanaka Uiwi Kuana Ike, indigenous Hawaiian perspective, grounded in Ike kupuna that have been passed on for generations. Our aina is a pu'uhonua. It is a sanctuary, a safe haven, a place of refuge, and a place of peace and safety. Kupuna of Honua'ula, whose traditional and cultural customary rights were violated in 1980s when the Prince Hotel prohibited continued access from Mauka to Makai, lived to see their blood, sweat, and tears pay off with the preservation of Kealaloa o Pi'ilani Shoreline Trail. However, many have passed and continue to guide us every part of the way. Those kupuna who have passed on are my father, protector of land, Iwi, and shoreline access, Leslie Apiu Aipolena Kulaloyo. My grandmother, Alice Akuna Kulaloyo, grandfather, Wallace Aipolena Kulaloyo, grand-aunt, Helen Kuama'o Peters, grand-uncle, Edward Chang Sr., auntie Maipela Wong, auntie Alice Kapoha Kimoheva, Kahu David Kavika Ka'alakea, respected Kanaka Oiwi archaeologist, Uncle Charles Keao, Uncle Ned Goodness, Kumuhula Auntie Hokulani Holt, educated land, resource, and Oiwi rights activist, Dana Naone Hall, and community rights champion, Jody Mitchell. Their legacy have entrusted in the board members of Keoho and the Ohana who live on this pu'uhonua. My Ferrera Ohana's aina is Mauka of our pu'uhonua. Their aina should be considered as well. In the past 25 years, our pu'uhonua is a halau, a cultural and educational center for multi-generational groups such as Punana Leo o Maui, Kulakaya Puni o Maui Kahalau, Ke Kua o Ka'ala La'au Ala Iliahi, Maui Akama of the University of Hawaii, Maui and Manoa campus, the Protect Kaho'olawe Ohana, the Kaho'olawe Island Reserve Commission, the crew of the Hokulea before their worldwide voyage in 2013. Our aina was blessed to be the gathering place for over 400 Ohana and friends of Honua'ula and throughout Hawaii to celebrate the life and legacy of my cousin, Henry Kealoha Hanalei Wong, in 2017. It is a place to kilo, observe weather patterns for fishermen, botanists, astrologists, geologists, archaeologists, teachers, students, and navigators. It is a cultural repository that has been kept as a pu'uhonua under the protection of Keoho o Honua'ula Inc. Its location is a kipuka, an oasis for recent displaced ohana who have spent time to heal and disconnect from chaos of current events. In closing, please support the designation of the community plan used for residential shown on this parcel as your Cpac recommended map suggests. Mahalo. I'm available for any questions or even be a resource for you for tonight.
Thank you. We're actually not discussing land use designations today. We can't. It's not on the agenda.
I know, but I'm talking about Honua'ula
so
and the map that you provided.
So we're doing that in 2 weeks.
Hi, Lena.
Aloha.
Yeah, so he just clarified where I was going to go to, but
Okay.
So this is us. We grew up, yeah, together. So hearing all what you're sharing, oh boy, I missed that.
Mahalo.
And no more too much of us.
Mm.
We caught the last end of our values from our kupuna. We caught some of that until 1980 came around, and we got run over. So yeah, we're not going to talk about that, but thank you for sharing that, because
if that was my place, or even at Kenoleo Road where I stay, and somebody like changed my designation, yeah, I'm gonna be upset. And you guys have your agreements, you guys created that pu'ohonua. It should stay like that. But you don't know how much I appreciate you coming, along with the rest of the hui. Mahalo.
Mahalo. Mahalo for that acknowledgement.
Okay.
Chair up. Okay, mahalo. Mahalo.
Aloha.
Thank you, Leonala, for coming. Your information was very useful. And I think last week's meeting, there are some questions that maybe we didn't get the clarity that we needed to. So I just wanted to mahalo you for going in depth about what your ohana has done, is doing, and wishes to continue to do so. Mahalo nui.
Mahalo nui for that.
Any clarifying questions? Cody?
Aloha Leonala.
Aloha kaua.
Yeah, kind of going off of what Kihoki was saying, basically looking for clarity. We are, like also Vernon was saying too, you know, we are kind of new to this. We are trying to understand everything. And when I made that recommendation, it wasn't presented like how you presented it. It was ahale, basically. So hearing about your, you know, talking about it being a kipuka, I can completely understand a pu'ohonua. Not a hale, but so much more than that. That does give a lot of clarity to it. So mahalo nui. Thank you.
Mahalo nui.
Any other clarifying questions? Thank you. Next testifier.
Good evening, Cpac members. I'm Rory Frampton. I'm a representative of Haleakala Ranch and Honolulu Ranch, and I've been working with Randy Wagner and members of the KCA Design Review Committee to help develop the policies related to the Kihei Mauka growth area. The ranchers are generally supportive of the final version that were handed out tonight. However, we do wish to go on record with just a few reservations. I don't think they're critical, but we just wanted to go on record with them. First is just overall impacts to the project costs. As with any project, the inclusion of additional amenities and components add to the project costs. Added costs will make it more challenging to produce housing units which are affordable to the working class. The Kihei Mauka project is years from breaking ground and will need to go through many steps of public review to secure land use approvals. A project developer is yet to be identified. It is difficult to provide definitive commitments to specific design components, but as the project progresses through the design and entitlement phases, some aspects to be included in the master plan may need to be revisited or refined. With regard to specific design components, the recommended master plan policy calls for a 200-foot greenbelt running along the Mauka edge of the property inside of the urban growth boundary. The ranchers are committed to a project that will have an integrated open space and greenway master plan, incorporating and utilizing the major gulches as a backbone of the plan. However, there are reservations about committing to a 200-foot wide open space corridor along the Mauka boundary without more detailed study of the overall open space and greenway master plan. The ranchers would be willing to commit to some type of greenbelt or open space corridor Mauka of the urban growth boundary, but overall the ranchers remain committed to a meaningful integrated open space and greenway master plan. For the collector road, implementation of effective traffic mitigation will be key to maintaining the quality of life for existing and future South Maui residents. However, to not allow one house to be occupied until the connection to Veterans Highway is made seems somewhat drastic. During the change in zoning process, there will be a detailed traffic study looking at existing and future conditions to determine specific improvements that are necessary to mitigate impacts from various stages of the project. It may be that traffic from initial stages of development could be mitigated through more attainable improvements in the short term. with regards to this, the connection to the Veterans Highway, the existing policies in the draft Cpac plan we feel are more realistic and fair. And those are, I've listed in my testimony, 2.17, 2.110, and the action items 1.13 and 2.3.10. But again, we really appreciate the positive collaboration that we've had with Randy and other members of the KCA Design Review Committee. We feel we share the same overall objectives, and we're committed towards finding a positive way to achieve our common goal of providing housing for Maui residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Any clarifying questions for the testifier? Daniel?
Aloha, Rory.
Aloha, Daniel.
Thank you for your testimony. So just to clarify, did you read the testimony that Randy submitted to us?
Yes.
Yeah.
The ones that were handed out today. The hard copy, yeah.
The hard copy, yeah.
Yeah,
And
yes.
it was also posted on.
It's a little bit, the version that you have in your hands today is a little bit different than the one that was posted yesterday.
Okay, thank you. And so is this a hard copy that you passed out to us today? That's
my testimony. That's not been posted yet, but it will be posted tomorrow.
Right. This is sort of your kind of answer to what was submitted from Randy, right?
Yeah. Which overall we're again generally supportive of those policies.
So as you said, okay. All right. Thank you, Roy. I just wanted to clarify your.
And I'm sorry. I just might add. We're also. I personally saw your testimony, and I think the changes to North Kihei that you suggested are good as well to the text.
All right. Mahalo.
Any other clarifying questions for the testifier? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next testifier.
Aloha, Chair and members of the committee. Can you hear me okay? Dave Good here, testifying on behalf of Ledcor Maui in regards to how open space for drainage ways are mapped and how you treat errors in that mapping going forward. As you know, the last plan is 25 years old, so chances are this plan revision is going to be around for a long time. I submitted testimony on July 13th suggesting language to clarify section 3.5, which is on your agenda, areas of stability, gulches. I'm now handing out a slight revision to that. Planning staff, member Daniel and Honua'ula have also submitted a draft policy change for your consideration on 3.5. I think we're actually all pretty close, and I modified my previous testimony with this handout you're receiving to try to wrap up these points in these various testimonies into a single statement. You may recall when I gave an overview of the remaining Wailea properties back in April and shared that a former small drainage way no longer can collect runoff from Maui Meadows. I've handed out a version of that slide again for you to refer to. Pi'ilani Highway cut through the area, making any runoff continuing Makai impossible without some kind of culvert / outlet through the cut rock. No such culvert exists. The drainage way within Maui Meadows is so small it's not even noted on the county's drainage master plan. This small drainage flow was directed a couple hundred yards north within Pi'ilani Highway to the larger existing drainage way near Okalani Drive. It's been like that for, 35, 40 years. It works pretty well. And judging by its size on the map, the one that goes through the middle of the property, you'd think it conveys more water than the other two drainage ways on the same property, but it clearly does not. So my suggested language in 3.5, which you have there, would allow a detailed project analysis to review the actual ground conditions for drainage, for biological resources, cultural and historical resources, view corridors, etc., and to determine, along with the planning department and any approving agency, if any of those mapped open space areas should be used as open space. But the draft map assumes an answer to those analyses without having done the work. So the department's language corrects the errors, or acknowledges errors can exist, but caveats that acknowledgement by saying, well, the area, even though the area is in the wrong place, you still got to keep the area. That doesn't seem fair to me. Probably doesn't sound fair to you. If it acknowledges an error, then why move the error around? So I think Daniel brings up some good points about other resources, and Honua Ula specifically brings up cultural site buffers. And listening to Ms. Vetter tonight, I think she pointed out there are other things going on in the properties that the plan doesn't know about and should wait to hear when they have the chance. So I think this language would work for everyone. Generally, we think a good planning practice acknowledge open space for gulches and drainageways are subject to refinement, which will make for better projects. In the final analysis, maybe there's more open space, maybe less, maybe the same. Let's have our community plan help make good project plans by acknowledging errors can and will exist, but not burden projects to accept the magnitude of any error. Thank you.
Thank you. Any clarifying questions? Daniel?
Hi, David. Thanks for your really nice map. I love
It's
pictures.
just one step above hand drawn, so.
Yeah.
Great.
So there is a culvert running along the boundary of Maui Meadows, you know, the west boundary that does collect water and does take it down to the north end. So
Yeah.
where your picture is pointing at, the drainage way, right? It does take the water, but not all the water. It does take some water, but not all the water. During heavy rainstorms, there are dikes below the surface. And when there's a lot of water, I've seen those dikes pump out water like a fire hose onto Pi'ilani Highway. So it does capture surface water, but it doesn't capture what runs below ground. Because when they cut, I guess I'm not asking a question. Sorry. Yeah, thank you for the map. I guess I don't really have a question, but just there are underwater seams that carry water when it rains heavily, and the culvert doesn't catch that. And you probably know that.
Gotcha. Okay.
Jennifer has a
Okay.
question.
Okay, so just looking at this picture, just to clarify, you're saying that the road is, so this gulch is running through the road, or you're saying the road cuts the gulch? Maybe explain this a little bit.
Okay. So if you look at the map, where there's the large green area that runs through the property, at one point there was some small amount of water that went through there. But it can't anymore because Pi'ilani Highway cut through there, and you can see the water's not going to go down the hill and back up the hill, right? So that little bit of water is now captured within Pi'ilani Highway. They got a little pipe, and it sends it to the north, to that other smaller drainage way, at least the small one on the map, a little green thing on the left side of the map. Yeah, in the corner. And that does flow. So it doesn't exist anymore in the middle of that parcel. I think this came up because it was shown on an original Wailea map in 1973, pre-highway. So it's kind of a lingering mapping issue. And my point is that this property will have open space on it. It'll have open space due to these gulches on the north and south, and almost guaranteed it's going to have archaeological and cultural open space. But it's not going to be shown like that, right? And so that's my point, is that in these cases where it's just totally wrong, but we're still going to have it, we're going to go through a process, right? And when you go through the process and you analyze everything, you find everything, and then you can do it correctly. So I think the department acknowledges that and says, you know, it can be moved, but the department also says you have to keep the same amount of area. But if it's an error, it's an error. So.
You found this error how?
Yeah. The first time I saw the map, I said, "What is that?" And I went out there and I looked, and I go, "No, can't. I don't. It doesn't."
So you actually walked
Oh, yeah.
this, and you saw there was no gulch.
Well, there's a depression and it comes back up. There's actually a small road that goes right through it. You can drive through it.
Okay.
You're not going to fall off anything. You can walk it.
Thank you.
Any other clarifying questions? Gary?
Good evening. Thank you for your thoughts. I guess I would ask a somewhat rhetorical question. I'm assuming that you suspect that there are more of these situations up and down the South Kihei or South Maui maps, cases where it's probably understated and cases where it's probably overstated, cases where it's probably terminated when it looks like in the map it's moving forward. Presuming that that is the case, and that would be my assumption as an engineer, that all mapping systems are approximate. They're not factually correct unless they're engineered to be factually correct. Then isn't it probably reasonable to presume that the county then would take reasonable actions to accommodate the reality of each of those situations as those came up through whatever planning process or permitting process that those properties had to go through?
That's a good question. That's a reasonable assumption. That's not what happens. So what would happen is, in fact, we had this because there's kind of a similar one on the existing community plan. And we went in for the SMA and they said, well, because it's on the map, you can't have any houses there or you can't put anything there because it's on the map. So because the 98 plan didn't have this language that we're discussing today, I think that's why the department realized, yeah, it's got to be adjusted. And that's why the language is really important, because otherwise you're stuck with incorrect maps. You'd have to do an equivalent of a community plan amendment, which is a huge deal. I think last week you folks dealt with a mapping error. That was a state land use map, right? And you guys made a nice correction for that. It was one property. I actually looked, because I've spent a lot of time at the county. Mapping errors happen for everybody. I looked up the word mapping error on the county website, got 53 distinct matches. It's happened a lot. And sometimes it can be really burdensome, and this is one example where it is. And that's why I think this language, which, like I said, we're all pretty close. And what I tried to do is amalgamate all those comments together and try to get a little bit of Daniel's, a little bit of Honu'ula's, and my concerns and the departments all in one spot, so make it easy for you guys.
Is there, Daniel has a clarifying question.
Sorry, David. So the map really is about open space designation for this parcel, right? This section, this drainage way. That's why you're presenting it to us?
Yeah, it's a great example that we have.
Okay.
Yeah. And
then the other submittal, this is about language in the section 3.5.
Correct.
So unfortunately, we're not talking about land use designations tonight. We're talking about the text, just to be clear.
Yeah, and I'm talking about the text. I'm using this example to
this is an example.
The text. Yeah.
You're bringing us an example.
Yeah.
All right. I see the connection. Thank you.
No worries. It's not easy.
Any other clarifying questions for the testifier? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Next testifier.
Good evening, Cpac members. My name is William Spence. I'm here helping Honu'ula. It is on? Okay. I'm here testifying on behalf of Honu'ula this evening. Part of your package tonight contains a letter from Calvert Chipchase from Cade Shetty. He raises a couple of issues. The first one, and I'll just go over these, and I'll also give you some commentary as a former planning director and the things, like David was just talking about, and how we dealt with them in the planning department for years, as a matter of fact. The first thing Cal brings up is how the open space designations may be realigned to, in the proposed language that's coming to you, better protect cultural resources, but the designations may not be removed. That realignment is critical because these maps are not, community plan maps are not supposed to be meets and bounds and truth to a surveyor precision. there needs to be adjustments as you go through the process, whether they be subdivision, whether they be, you know, an SMA permit, or in Honua'ula's case, a phase 3 kind of approval when the maps do become hard. His preference, Cal brings up a point, instead of just saying to protect cultural resources, he points out that it would be better to say to reflect the buffers for cultural resources. And the point that he makes in this is Honua'ula's process has been so long, and there are so many agreements and so many studies. Using the term buffer is more reflective of that history and more reflective of the agreements that have been reached for that. So that language comes up. The second item he brings up is about the 100-foot buffer at the top of the bank of identified gulches and drainage ways. There's a couple of things with this. Cal points out that this may not be a legal thing to put in the plan itself, because, I mean, you're making such a broad statement, you're applying it so over the top everywhere. This is the kind of thing that's better left to a legislative process. Have a policy or something that says, go through the process to establish these buffers. It probably end up in Title 20 or something. And I can just finish up. These designations are not supposed to be surveyed quality. They're supposed to be identification. They're supposed to be policy on a plan. Then the very last thing he points out, he questions the term Bahi Kapuna. It's not a term that I'm familiar with, but I would, you know, I trust Cal's judgment on this stuff. And I think the point is that there may be a conflict between this kind of language and some of the other laws, Chapter 6E, federal law, other things that may have a conflict. So I would urge the members to look at this a little closely, maybe have Corporation Counsel take a peek at it. Okay, thank you, members. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you. Any clarifying questions? Daniel?
Hi, Will.
Hi, Daniel.
Good evening. Aren't general plans part of the legislative process?
They are adopted by legislation. They are policy documents.
Okay. And isn't the community plan part of the general plan?
Yes, it is.
And won't the community plan eventually be adopted as part of the legislative process?
It is adopted by the legislative, this policy document is adopted through a legislative process.
So I would expect it to be reviewed by the county council at some point and vetted by corporation council, correct?
I would hope that as well.
That's usually the process, as I've seen it. So I think it is part of the legislative process, and it would be great if we had corporation counsel here at our meetings to maybe ask questions. But unfortunately, we don't have that. We don't have corporation counsel here very often. So anyway, thank you for your testimony.
Maybe perhaps I should clarify, if it's okay. What I'm referring to is perhaps there should be a policy to say, establish a law to provide buffers. So when I say a legislative process, I mean amending Title 20, which deals with drainage and grading and those kinds of things. That would be the appropriate place to specify 100 feet or specify as applied to, you know, individual gulches and different circumstances. Just the thing that Cal brings up is just to say 100 feet, that's too broad and it's too vague to be included in a policy document.
Any other clarifying questions? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Next testifier.
Hi, my name is Teresa Leeper, and I'm the owner of Kihei Veterinary Clinic on South Kihei Road by St. Teresa's. Me and my husband have been the owners for 8 years. And I kind of wanted to echo what you had said about Kihei Mauka and the importance of that property growing the community as we know it, as opposed to changing the community. When I bought Kihei Veterinary Clinic, 100% of my staff members lived in Kihei. One of my staff members currently lives in Kihei. All the rest of them had to move either off island or to other parts of the island to afford living. So now their commute is not 5 to 10 minutes, it's 45 minutes to an hour. So their 8 to 10 hour workday now has an hour of commute on both sides. Furthermore, the Kihei Mauka, aside from being affordable housing, if we do residential, like she was saying, we get more small businesses owned by people who live in Kihei, owned by people who live on Maui. I can't compete with the corporate veterinary hospitals like Central Maui. The company that owns them owns 110 veterinary hospitals in the United States. I own one. I can't pay my employees like they pay their employees to be able to live the way they live because I don't have giant corporations filling my bank accounts. So if we make Kihei Mauka a big shopping center, guess who's moving in? A corporate veterinary hospital, an Applebee's, another Outback Steakhouse. We're not getting the Kihei we all know and love isn't going to survive if we take another giant parcel of land and give it to the mainland companies. I haven't made a profit in 3 years. That's so that my employees can survive, period. That's it. I can't keep going like that forever, and I can't compete against the deep pockets of the mainland. So if we want Kihei to stay like we all love it, we have to fight for it. And the only way we can do that is to allow people who live here to own the businesses and people who live here to live in the houses. I am in a unique position in my business where I help the locals and I help the rich people who moved here from the mainland. They're all my clients. And I have to treat them equally, no matter if they show up in a $250,000 Mercedes or my husband has to go jump their car to get them out of the parking lot. I don't have very many people that my husband can help jump their car anymore. But I have a whole lot of Mercedes in my parking lot. But I can't raise my prices for everybody across the board because then the people who live here can't afford to help their dogs and cats. So I just ask you to think about what we love about Kihei and whether we want to hand over a big parcel of land like that to the mainland or if we want to keep it for ourselves. Thank you for your time.
Question from Kyoki.
Teresa, mahalo nui for coming and testifying. So when we do get back to these land use designations, I encourage everyone, including yourself and everyone who is here tonight that possibly could have added to these testimonies to please, come out again, wherever the location is and however it is. You're right, these land use designations, and hopefully they get followed through, through council and all this processes that Daniel was mentioning earlier, happens, and we do, what the community wants. But my message to you is keep on doing what you're doing, and I tell you what, even with the big corps, the service that the small ones provide, I would make the difference. So,
thank you.
Yeah, mahalo nui.
Any other clarifying questions? Daniel?
Aloha, Teresa.
Aloha, Daniel.
I just wanted to, could you tell me what the name of your business is again?
Kihei Veterinary Clinic.
Oh, Kihei Veterinary Clinic. Thank you. I didn't hear that at the beginning.
Sorry.
Appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Any other clarifying questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. Next testifier.
Hi, Larry Stevens. This is probably my last chance to testify before you all because I'm going to be gone for a few weeks. And I just wanted to make the point that we have a situation where we can't build housing because we don't have infrastructure, and we can't get infrastructure unless we get developers to pay for it. So we end up with we're kind of locked, and we can't do anything. So my proposal would be to think about different ways to finance infrastructure so that we can move ahead with infrastructure before we have developers lined up to pay for it. Because they will come if we set that up correctly, and then we can charge them on the back end. That would work for the collector road and for many other projects that may never get built because we can't get out of this off the hamster wheel. So that's my only point. Thank you. And thank you for all your service and for continuing to struggle through all of this.
Mike has a question.
Larry? You can't get away that easy. Thank you for coming so frequently and testifying. Would you, as a taxpayer, be willing to pay additional taxes to your county government to build this infrastructure with the understanding that it would be reimbursed later? You may not get your tax money back, but would you be willing to lay out money to do so?
We have to do something, and if taxes are the only way to do it, we have to do that. My preferred choice is to take on debt because that's how most jurisdictions handle their infrastructure problems. They borrow the money, they build the infrastructure, and then they ding the developers down the road to pay off the debt. That's a very standard procedure used widely across the country. I think it would work well for us here. Otherwise, the other thing I'd like about that is that it allows us to build infrastructure at scale all at once. Instead of building the collector road block by block by block by block, we couldn't do it any more expensively than that. That's the least rational way to do infrastructure because you can't get any economies of scale. If instead we had debt financing, we could just build the collector road and then collect money over time to pay off that debt. The debt payments don't happen all at once. They happen over a period of many years. So that would give us time to get the developers to build, to give us the money that we need to pay it off. And if that doesn't work and we have to have additional taxes to fill up the pot, then so be it, in my opinion.
Thank you. I know you're a money guy, so I knew you would come up with a better
I'm not a money guy.
Mahalo.
Any other clarifying questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next testifier. Okay, I just want to clarify. We are going to be, we're probably going to take a little break, but next after that we'll be starting to discuss the sub-area descriptions. So there will be another opportunity to testify on policies, but if you want to testify on the sub-area descriptions, now's the time. Are there any more testifiers on that topic? Okay, closing testimony is 6:36 p.m., and we're going to take a 10-minute break. Okay, restarting the meeting at 6:49 p.m. And so our next topic is the sub-area descriptions. We finished section 3.3, we're working on 3.4. Any motions? Kyoki.
Thank you, Chair. So we had some discussions about this the last time, and there was some good stuff. Everett's not here tonight, but there were some things brought up at Everett, and this was in regards to the language in that Ma'alaya section.
Yeah, 3.4, sorry. So in the challenges and opportunities portion, when they talk about the regional wastewater system, like I said, you know, I've spoke to a group that has been working on this for a while. By the way, I'm not part of any group. When I speak for myself as a resident born and raised in Maui. I'm not part of the MVA, I'm not part of any groups, but these groups have worked on this for quite a while. So when I see language that says, you know, to me, it says having more residents and businesses to spread the cost of this system provides an opportunity. After speaking to this group, I don't find that to be accurate. So again, what I would like to see is that sentence be removed, and then onward into the next sentence. The next portion is further down. Hold on one moment, please. Okay, resistance to redevelopment by the area's existing residents can be challenging and will necessitate a thorough and inclusive planning process. That is another sentence that I think can be removed. To me, it just doesn't sound right. Yeah, it's like assuming that people gone, I mean, well, no, in these type of processes, you're gonna have some type of resistance or opposition or in favor of, so yeah, it sounds kind of negative. So on the removal of that, I guess I would like to make a motion to remove that sentence and also the sentence while having more residents and businesses to spread the cost of their systems. So the language we talked about, including treated effluent public facilities, I'm not sure if that's appropriate either. I don't know, I can see somewhere in the region the opportunity for police and fire. Not sure about schools, but yeah, so the need for a regional wastewater system is challenging. I think that can be sufficient. That is my motion.
I'll second the motion for discussion.
So, as I understand it, you're making a motion to remove the first thing on the top, at the top of page 91, which is, while having more residents and businesses to spread the cost of the systems provides an opportunity.
Yes.
And then also to remove
Resistant
the
and
entire
then
sentence that says starts with resistance to redevelopment.
correct.
That's correct, okay.
Yeah.
Second by Jennifer. Okay. Discussion? Yeah. Gary?
Just maybe a short, friendly amendment. I think leaving in the idea of having the community be part of a thorough and planning process still has some value in there. I think it's rather than being a negative statement, maybe we could make it a positive statement. That's important to have the community be part of a thorough planning process. It's important for the area's residents to have a thorough and inclusive planning process.
Like that? Kyoko likes that?
Yeah, you agree with that? Yeah, thank
Okay.
you.
So remove that part that starts with while having to the end of the sentence, and then replacing the resistance to with, could you read it one more time?
I think it's on the screen now, so it's, there we go.
Okay. Any further discussion? Any objections? Oh, Daniel?
Sorry, Chair, can I have like half a minute just to reread it? To read it.
Okay, any objections? Fine, we have made those changes to page 91. So I know Daniel has prepared a bunch of suggestions, and I think we might as well process them in order. You have them in your packet.
So we're looking at my my text recommendations for page 92. It's up on the screen now.
So are you making a motion?
Okay, so page 92, add new sentence at the end of the third paragraph. So it's a new sentence to read, to mitigate, and this is under challenges and opportunities, right? For the Central Maui Bayshard. So for Central Maui Bayshard, and then that's page 92, and there are challenges and opportunities. And at the very end of the paragraph, I'm suggesting adding a new sentence that reads, to mitigate wildfire hazards, adequate fire breaks should be maintained around the perimeter of the Central Maui Bayshard. Yeah, there it is.
Is there a second? Second by Jennifer. Discussion?
Since I made the motion, the point is that the Maui Bayshard is surrounded by open spaces that have a lot of accelerant, mostly non-native grasses. So it would be a good idea to mitigate that hazard by having some sort of defensible area around the Bayshard, like a fire break. So that's the idea. And as we know, the Central Maui has had wildfires over the years in different areas. So just want to protect the Bayshard. Thank you, Chair.
Brian?
Daniel, wouldn't that actually be an action that we would potentially want to include when we cover actions? I mean, I support it. I just, to me, it'd be something I would say it would be an action. So on action day, can we put it there versus, I don't know if it really belongs here. Again, I agree with the concept, but I think an action would be more appropriate.
Well, the title of the paragraph is Challenges and Opportunities. And so one of the challenges of building in Central Maui in that open field area are wildfires. I mean, that's just the reality of the situation. So I'm just calling it out. And I think there'll be a lot of calling out given what we've gone through in the last month. So that's my point. And I intend to bring it up multiple times, so it's not the first time.
So, so I think we approved Mr. Stone. You know, he can have more acres, I think, for his base yard, right? So we gave him more land, kind of. That's where we're at. So that probably going to be his land that he going to have to make mitigation. Surrounding area around there is all mahi pono, I believe. So do we have to include those landowners in there, or we, you know what I mean, yeah, Jackie? Because outside of that, those Central Maui base yard is all mahi pono. Do we have to include the landowner, or just this language is fine? Yeah, that's what I was asking. Yeah.
I think we would, I don't know if every single parcel around the perimeter of the base yard, or who owns all of them. I guess we'd have to look at that. It might be better to just keep it broad. I'm not sure. Karen might have.
This is challenges and opportunities. So what Daniel did here is perfect. It's just saying there's a challenge with wildfires. An opportunity would be putting fire breaks around the perimeter. This is not requiring it. It's like a suggestion for development to make sure the development's good development.
Further discussion? Any objections? Okay, added that sentence to page 92.
Are you opening this section up to anybody that has?
Pardon me?
Yeah, we're on page 92. So,
yes.
Are you asking if there's any others that want to add it, or
any other additions or changes to page 92? Nope. Okay.
Would you like me to read it out loud so everybody can hear it? Okay. The Central Maui Base Yard is located east of Maui Veterans Highway at the northern extent of the South Maui Community Plan area. The existing developed base yard encompasses approximately 54 acres. The Maui Island Plan identifies expansion of industrial uses in the area, with the urban growth boundary encompassing 168 acres. The South Maui Community Plan allows for expansion north and east of the existing base yard, potentially expanding the industrial area by 66 acres. This will allow for the expansion of existing industries and the addition of new businesses. The planned growth area represents a logical expansion of industrial land use in the area. The area's location midway between South Maui and Kahului makes it a convenient site to serve the island's long-term heavy industrial land use needs. Challenges and opportunities. The central location provides an opportunity for Maui's industry to grow in an area best suited for industry. Development of the area must ensure the protection of view corridors along Maui Veterans Highway, as well as Mauka and Makai view planes. Linear strip development along the Maui Veterans Highway is strongly discouraged. Buildings should be set back significantly from the highway. Interior roadways should connect to existing intersections with the highway, so no new intersections are needed, and all light traffic timing along the highway should be coordinated for optimum traffic flow. To mitigate wildfire hazards, adequate fire breaks should be maintained around the perimeter of the Central Maui Base Yard. You guys did actually change the growth area for this area, so the acres will change. That change has not been made yet. This is just the document as of August of last year. But you expanded the area to encompass the entire Maui Island Plan growth area.
Okay, moving on. Page 94.
Chair, I did make text change recommendation to page 94, which would be added to the last sentence. Let's see, last sentence of the first paragraph, where it says Mauka, North Kihei. So go to the bottom of that paragraph and read the last sentence, which currently reads, for future development of the entire area will be anticipated so that appropriate long-term planning for infrastructure and community facilities will take place. And so I'm making a recommendation to change it to read what's up there on the screen right now. Future development of the entire area will be anticipated so that appropriate long-term planning for adequate infrastructure like a Mauka North-South Collector Road, flood mitigation, and public facilities and services will take place prior to or concurrent with development.
Is there a second? Second by Brian. Discussion?
Chair, this section is a little bit of an oxymoron because the sentence before the one that I'm recommending to be amended says, since the adoption of the Maui Island Plan in 2012, population projections have decreased. And during the community plan update process, the community called for some growth in this area, but not to the full extent of the Maui Island Plan's Kihei Mauka Plan growth area. And then the new language which was added when this was previously visited, added the language that I'm suggesting being changed. But the oxymoron is that those two sentences are contradictory, because in the first place you're saying that there's a population projections have decreased since 2012, since these urban growth boundaries were established in the Maui Island Plan in 2012. It's decreased, and also that the community in meetings asked that the growth boundary wouldn't be all the way out to the full extent. And then we've added, this sentence was added previously at a meeting I wasn't at that says, oh, we should include it all the way to the growth boundary so that we can have long-range planning in a comprehensive manner. So that's an oxymoron, that's a contradiction to me. But I'm just adding this language to what's there right now, because we're not talking about land use designations. Maybe we'll revisit Mauka North Kihei later on down the road, but I think I just wanted to wordsmith the last sentence a little bit to say that it is important that we have a north-south collector on Mauka Road at some point. Anyway, that's my comments on my motion. Thank you, Chair.
Does everyone see the motion? Any further discussion? Any objections? Oh, Gary?
Just a friendly note on your note there, right, Daniel. To a degree, having a statement in there about what was going on in 2012 seems a little bit, old. I mean, we're in 2023, so saying what the thinking was in 2012, I'm not sure has relevance to a document that we're trying to develop in 2023.
That's not part of the motion. The motion is what Daniel is suggesting there, the last sentence.
Oh, okay. I thought he was making a suggestion also on the other part as well. Sorry.
Nope. Any further discussion? Any objections? Okay, adopting Daniel's additional sentence. Any other changes to this Mauka North Kihei? You had one to the next page, 95, right?
Chair, I think you had some changes or thoughts on 94. Do you want to go through yours, or do you just want to stay with? Did you submit testimony on that? I mean, member comment on page 94. You submitted comment on North Kihei, page 94.
Yeah, the language doesn't correspond to the actual land use designations we made, but I assume that will be corrected as along with the Central Maui base yard numbers and the other things. So you had a suggestion for page 95?
We're moving to 95. Are we still on 94?
95. This is the same section, page 95.
Are we going to make updated changes to page 94 under change envisioned? Because that's what's there right now is changed based upon Cpac recommendations. Right. So, for example, the Kihei Mauka Plan growth area is designated neighborhood center, not small town center.
It's actually a mix of residential and neighborhood center. Would you like that to be? You'd like to say residential and neighborhood center? I can correct the designations to match your designations that you eventually have.
The Kihei Mauka Plan growth area. So let's see. Is designated. We're talking about not the Pi'ilani Promenade area, but are we saying that the Kihei Mauka area is including the Pi'ilani Promenade or the North Kihei Mauka area? It looks like there is a sentence that's specifically for the Pi'ilani Promenade. So I'm saying we should update it. The Kihei Mauka Plan growth area is designated residential and neighborhood, right? Residential and neighborhood center, and that's right.
Jennifer?
Just to clarify, Karen, you're saying you're going to update all the designations according to what we've changed over the last 8-9 months. So is this not the time to do it?
You guys do not have to go through and change item by item which designations. We will change them to match what you recommend. If you want to change the meaning of one of the sentences, that's more what you should be focused on.
Thank you.
Cody did have his hand up at one point for page 94.
So Daniel, are you ready to go on to page 95?
So we're going through these now, and we do remember. I think as collectively we do remember the changes that were made. Like, for example, the Ohukai Road, the South Ohukai Road is designated. It's not a transient-orientated center. It's an employment center. So all the verbiage that is in the paragraph should reflect what an employment center is. So the verbiage that follows transient orientated center is incorrect. That whole last, all the way to the end, that's incorrect. That doesn't describe an employment center. It describes a transient employment center. So I don't know, I just think it's important that we get to see the final version of what this is going to look like before we're done here, to make sure that we all agree that this is what we agreed upon, rather than, I don't know, after, we're no longer meeting. So while we can work on this together, we should do it now. That's my thoughts anyway.
That's fine if that's what you want to do.
Brian?
Thanks, Chair. I think since we are going to be going back to some of the land designations, it may not be in our best interest to spend the time to rewrite these until we have that conversation, because we could spend a whole bunch of time discussing it, updating it, and then revert back to something else and then have to change it again.
I would recommend having both the maps and the language on the agenda at the same time.
I think Brian makes a good point. Thank you, Brian. And Karen makes a good point. Thank you, Karen.
Are we ready to go to page 95?
Okay, page 95. We're still in Mauka, North Kihei, and then we're looking at challenges and opportunities. So I'm making a motion on page 95. Middle sentence in first paragraph, the only paragraph, to read where it says it will. It's up there already. It will be important to create roadway and greenway connections between new and existing developments in this area to promote efficient movement, and a Mauka North-South Collector Road with a direct connection to the Maui's Veterans Highway to alleviate traffic on Pi'ilani Highway.
Is there a second? Second by Mike. Mike seconded. Gary did too, but I think Mike beat him. Give it to Mike. Gary, you get it next time. Gary wants to speak on this. You want the mic? Okay. Any discussion?
Hey, Daniel. Just curious on the Mauka North-South Collector Road. Is that the best designation or like a highway instead of a collector road? The Mauka, yeah? Like above Ohukai. Should we treat that as North-South Collector Road north side, or because eventually...
This is what we were talking about before, we were talking about a North-South Collector Road, Mauka, Pi'ilani Highway, in the so-called plan developed, through the R&T Park, through North Kihei, Mauka, through Ohukai, North Kihei area, and connecting to Veterans Highway North, and where it connects south, we discussed that. So I don't know. I didn't put in where we connect south, but generally we want to see another way to get out of Kihei Mauka, right? That's the idea.
So it's from up here, Lipoa, towards Mokulele.
Yeah. AKA, we can add that in. Let's add that in. Veterans Highway, AKA Mokulele Highway. So we'll add that in there if we can.
Mike's okay with that addition? Yes. Any further discussion? Any objections? Okay, I adopted that change to the sentence starting with, it would be important too. You got another change here in the last sentence?
Yes, Chair, I have another recommended change to the last sentence. It's already up there to read. Sorry, I'm visually challenged. So another significant challenge for this area of change is mitigating wildfire hazards, preventing environmental impacts on Makai resources, including reefs and wetlands, by mitigating flooding Mauka to Makai. So I just added wildfire hazards and Mauka to Makai, basically to the last sentence. I just added more stuff to the stew.
Is there a second? Brian seconds. Discussion? Any objections? Okay, fine. We added the wildfire hazards. Looks like you don't have any further changes until page 100. Does anyone else have any changes before page 100? Okay, you want to introduce your change for page 100?
We're in page 100 now, Chair?
Yep, since...
Okay, R&T Park, challenges and opportunities. So I did recommend a change to the last sentence of that paragraph to read, as with all development, Mauka Pilani Highway, a significant challenge for this area of change is mitigating wildfire hazards and preventing environmental impacts on Makai resources, including reefs and wetlands, and mitigating flooding Mauka to Makai. So that's my motion, Chair.
Is there a second? Second by Vernon. So it's really the same change, adding mitigating wildfire hazards. Discussion? Any objections? Okay, fine. We adopted that change to page 100. Any other changes up to page 105? You had a suggestion for page 105.
And Chair, I did have a suggestion to page 105. And the suggestion is that 105? Okay. Let's see, the end of the first paragraph. Hang on, I'm not on it. Oh, sorry, Chair. Are we on areas of stability or are we on McKenna? Because McKenna and my sheet and areas of stability are both 105. Are we on McKenna?
We're on section 3.5, areas of stability, page 105.
Okay. Okay, so it's just a motion to change the last. Let's see. Okay, yeah, it's actually the second to the last sentence that says these areas of stability. Okay, to change it to read as follows. These areas of stability reflect several things the South Maui community cares about protecting for future generations, including cultural resources, important Mauka and Makai viewplanes. So I've added that. Open spaces, dark skies, I've added that. Environmental features and natural resources like wetlands. And the next sentence changed to, I think I've added another sentence or changed the last sentence to read these. There are several areas of stability identified in this plan. This is not an exhaustive list. Okay, that whole thing is my motion.
Is there a second? Second by Vernon. Discussion? Any objections? Okay, if we adopted that change to the first paragraph of page 105. Then you had some follow-up things on the same page.
Chair.
Brian?
There's a typo on 103 in challenges and opportunities. It's the added blue section, which is the project will include significant public infrastructure improvements, including the widening of Pialani Highway. So the motion would be to remove including the second time.
So what was that exactly?
Challenges and opportunities. It's the blue insert. It just says including the.
Okay, it's page 103. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, for grammatical things, I mean, typos, I don't think we need to have motions and adopt them. We can just fix those things. Daniel?
Chair, since we're on 103, can we visit McKenna? It's 105 on my sheet. I don't know what page it's on. It's McKenna.
Yep, two 105s. You're right.
There's two 105s, so that's. I'm not crazy.
It's a great number.
I like to make an amendment to the paragraph challenges and opportunities. So the first sentence where it reads in the second phrase, but the challenge of providing workforce housing is in an area so close to South Maui Resort Employment Center exists. Oh, maybe I should wait till Karen gets it up. Okay, great. Thank you. So challenges, we're at the bottom of challenges. So I want to change, let's see. The development of the remaining parcels in McKenna will provide the opportunity for more luxury homes in the area. But the challenge of providing workforce housing in an area so close to South Maui Resort Employment Center exists. I just wanted to change challenge to need. But the need, not of, but the need for providing workforce housing in an area so close to South Maui Resort Employment Center exists.
Is there a second? Second by Tova. Discussion? Any objections? Okay, I find we have replaced the...
And then one more change in that same paragraph, last sentence. This development also faces the challenges of developing water and flood control infrastructure, preserving cultural sites, and legal challenges, et cetera, et cetera. I want to change cultural sites to cultural landscapes and sites. So preserving cultural landscapes and sites. Because there are lots of cultural landscapes in McKenna, in which there are many sites. So.
Is there a second? Second by Vernon. Discussion? Any objections? Okay, we added landscapes.
Chair.
Going back to...
yeah, 105.
Yeah, you had some additions there.
Yeah, I had some suggested areas of stability to add to the list. So the list includes gulches and Ahikinau. It's a very short list. And, Ahikinau is a natural area reserve. So that comes under the state of Hawaii. So I just wanted to add the following things. Mauka, and some of this, this one I took out of the 1998, the current plan. Mauka and Makai view planes from Pi'ilani Highway and South Kihei Road. But I'd also like to add from Mokulele Highway, aka Veterans Highway, in that list. Preserving Mauka and Makai view planes from those highways. Mokulele Highway, Pi'ilani Highway, and South Kihei Road. I'll go through the whole list. And the next one is South Maui Sand Dune Systems. And the next one is South Maui Wetlands. And the next one is remnant dryland forest habitats, and I'd like to add to that native coastal flora and plant communities. So remnant native dryland forest habitats and native coastal flora and plant communities. Okay, native coastal flora and plant communities. And then one more, dark skies in all sub-areas with an emphasis on sub-areas 1, 5, 6, and Mauka Pi'ilani Highway. That's my little list.
Is there a second? Second by Brian. Discussion? Any objections? Okay, fine. We have adopted those additions to The
Chair, I have another motion I'd like to make on
Sure.
this section. I'd like to make a motion to add the verbiage that David Good presented to us under the section, why is this area important? Do you guys have that in front of you? He added a couple of words in red. Do you have that? So, yeah, so that's the one section. And then the other section he added would have to be a friendly amendment to Daniel's. Daniel, did I get that right? Area description, you added a sentence at the end? So it's two. First motion is, why is the area important? If I could make a motion to add without mitigation in 2 areas and preserving significant gulches in that last paragraph. So he gave us this testimony just now when he presented tonight. Is that right, Dave? Yeah.
Okay, so that's page 105, looks like. Is that right?
So
Okay.
section 3.5 still. The 105 page is confusing everybody. So it's section 3.5, area of stability.
And the change you're proposing is his addition to the area description?
Why is this area important? Under that section right there, Karen has put it in blue for the first one. And in the last sentence, Karen, before reduces, yes. And then the last paragraph, preserving significant is the additional word. That's my motion to add that.
Is there a second? Second by Brian. Discussion?
Can I make a friendly amendment? There was a change that Dave put in the first paragraph that it was striking they and changed it to it also identifies areas that should remain the same.
Yeah, that sounds good.
And then the second one is the language that David suggested in the area description, which is, however, the final step in delineating the gulches will take place during a subdivision or development process review, where exact topographical drainage and other important project mitigations can be professionally mapped with the precision and expertise needed to make a final determination of gulch limits and its open space designations.
I just have one grammatical comment. They refers to the community, which would not be an it.
I'm fine with striking that.
She supersedes that. Yeah. It's they. Thanks, Karen.
So it was the text in area description that Dave provided tonight?
You're missing the preserving significant gulches in the last paragraph under what? Sorry, Brian, let's go back to my first motion. So why is this area important? Yep, right there. Significant, please. That's as per Dave Good's recommendation. Great, thank you.
Discussion?
Do you have the
Tova and
text,
then
Karen?
Daniel. Go ahead, Tova. Oh, yielding to Daniel?
I have some concerns about changing the intent of leaving gulches undeveloped by adding without mitigation. The way that reads to me is by saying with mitigation, development is possible within the gulch areas. And I think there's been a lot of discussion about the desire to prevent development, regardless of whether or not there's mitigation in the gulch areas. So I'm voicing concerns about that. I'm fine with the area description addition, suggesting that the need to delineate the gulches takes place at a finer scale at an appropriate point. And so nothing is locked into being on a map. That seems very logical to me.
Daniel?
Yeah, with things like this, and when we get it, not before the meeting, but during the meeting, even with testimony, personally, I always like to think it through rather than decide quickly. I don't know how. It just seems like I would prefer more time to weigh the language on this particular motion. I'm not saying I'm against what's in there, but I would like more time to maybe come back to it when we come back to when we review everything. Maybe you don't like that, but I read all the testimonies, submitted testimonies online before I come to the meeting, so I can make educated decisions on that by the time I come here, because I've looked at it more closely. It's more difficult to do that when you have it just handed to you at the meeting. So that's kind of my way, unless it's very simple changes. But I'm not that familiar with what the changes. I'm not so sure what the changes mean in the overall, or the description, or what is important in this area. This is just my thought process.
Any other discussion? Kyoki?
Thank you, Chair. I got to agree a little bit with Daniel. One of the changes that I'm a little hesitant on, just right off the bat, is the addition of significant, because, you know, a gulch is not significant until it's significant. And like that area, much like the areas where I live, you know, there are gulches that are dry a lot of the time of the year, but when they run, those buggers run. So to make the distinction of the significance or insignificance of a gulch, I'm a little concerned with. Thank you.
Jennifer?
I totally understand what you're saying, and I think Dave's testimony with this picture depicting this gulch as a significant portion on this map that doesn't even connect through the highway is, I believe that's my interpretation of what he's referring to. I think the whole message here is that we need to acknowledge that errors exist in the maps, and that, like, if it's true what you said, if it's listed, it's word. So I would just like to put, I'm fine if we, you know, remove the word significant, but I think the point is we need to, that first section needs to really be explained that errors do happen. And I wasn't here for the last meeting that you guys found the error and worked it through. There was an error on a map. So I just want to, that's really why I think this is important that we add it, that it acknowledges errors do exist, and that just because the map says one thing, things change over time. And the maps aren't always updated.
Gary?
Yeah, I think I'm probably closer to Daniel on this, but my sense is I'm not sure this is the right place to deal with errors in maps. It looks like we're trying to take a bullet and shoot a big problem. If the big problem is maps don't align right and that things aren't exactly as we think they are and that there needs to be a process to resolve that in a rational, reasonable way, that the community buys off was done correctly, the planning department and the government feels that it's been done right, the developer feels everything was equitable, then I think we should try to find a way to address that. Because I'm very concerned with putting in things that could be read by, because if you say not significant, the question is who determines what's significant, right? The community's trying to say here, these things are significant. That doesn't mean that the planning department isn't at some point going to say, we can't do this thing because it's impossible. And I don't think anybody in the community would expect the county to do something that's impossible. So I'm not super comfortable with this right now, and I'd like to, maybe have us all think about how to address this on a more holistic way going forward.
Final comment. If it's Dave Good, everybody knows his position with the county and so on. Maybe we can call him up if this is of time. I mean, if it was any other random person making these suggestions, I don't know how I'd feel, but Dave's got a lot of experience in the planning department in the county. Is this appropriate for him to come up and talk about this or no?
I think we should go to a vote. We can't keep talking about this forever. Okay. We have other things to do here. Are we ready for a vote? Okay. Those in favor, please raise your hands. Those against, please raise your hands.
Two yeses and everybody else was no, which makes it, 11 people today? So
Motion failed. Okay. Are there any other motions on the sections 3.4 to 3.5, the sub-area descriptions? Daniel?
Chair, before we leave this section, if there aren't any other motions, we have a resource person here, Randy Wagner, and I wanted to ask her a question.
She's a resource person for policies. Do you have a question for her about?
Okay, we have another. Okay, sorry, Chair. Let me just take a quick look to answer your questions. If anything else, just give me 1 minute, Chair.
Okay.
Chair, I did have a couple of small items in
okay.
Page 99, Maui Research and Technology Park. In the last, let's see, I think it's the last paragraph. Where it reads, the growth area may also include exhibit halls and meeting spaces to support the development of a research and technology sector and to serve the broader needs of the South and Central Maui. So I think there is a need, and the Malcolm Center helps fulfill a community need because it's a meeting space. And this fulfills a meeting need because it's also a meeting space. But I think the community needs more meeting spaces. And if the R&T Park is willing to provide a meeting space in there as they build out that is larger than the Malcolm Center, because the Malcolm Center holds like 80 people max, something like that. And there's no, I don't know if anybody from the R&T Park is here, but I would recommend, I would like to see maybe a conference room, conference meeting room that could accommodate, you know, maybe 150 to 200 people that the community could use, that has the, you know, technology that we need, because I think we have a shortage of that, and KCA is always looking for a place for meetings, and the Maui Meadows Neighborhood Association is always looking for a place for host meetings. So I guess my motion is to add conference meeting rooms.
You know, this is a sub-area description. This is not an action or a policy.
Oh, yes, I know. I'm making a big deal of it, but I saw it there, and I don't know. That's my motion.
So where it says meeting space, to add meeting space and conference hall? Is there a second? Okay. Tova seconds. Tova seconds. Okay. Discussion? Any objections? Okay. The other one?
And the last meaning one is page 101, county-owned parcel, the last sentence, challenges and opportunities, where it reads, as the county transitions away from the use of wastewater injection wells, this parcel could act as an outlet for excess R1 water to irrigate the native forest and park. Okay, now, sometimes you have to be careful when you irrigate native plants, which are found in native forests. And I don't know if R1 water is the best thing to use to irrigate native plants and trees. So I'm a little concerned about that statement. Maybe say to water, R1 water to irrigate the park and native plants and native forests, if native plant experts find it appropriate, or something along that line.
Have you seen the KOKO planting?
Pardon?
Have you seen the KOKO planting?
I
mean,
sorry.
this is really valuable stuff. This is what enables us to replant native plants on the Mauka part is the R1 water. Without it, we couldn't do it.
I'm saying if it's fine with experts, then it's appropriate, right? That's all I'm saying. So you're saying, based on what you know, they use R1 water to water all native plants?
Absolutely. That is what keeps them alive right now.
Okay. Then I'm fine with it, if that's been your experience.
Any other, anything else on the sub-area descriptions? Okay, 5-minute break before we start on the policies. Okay, resuming at 8:01 p.m. So do we have anyone who wants to testify on policies who has not testified already on policies? Okay, closing public testimony on policies. So to respect the people who have come here and waited for this moment, we're going to start with the new proposed policies, if anyone wants to make a motion for them. We have we have the 6 policies that were proposed by Randy, and then we have the the additional policies that were requested by the Cpac. Yep. Daniel?
Chair, I wanted to ask Randy Wagner a question. She could come up if that's okay with you. She's a resource person.
Randy, please approach the microphone.
Will you please approach the bench? Hey, Randy.
Hi.
I mean, you testified a couple hours ago, and so did Rory. And I wanted to ask you the question at that time, but you guys, I just wanted to understand that if you have been working together, and that that based on Rory's testimony, he, basically agrees with your proposals with what he's kind of submitted in testimony that may differ. So I just wanted to know where you folks were and where you differed, or where you agree. Yeah.
Well, there's some really significant areas where we differ. And to me, they're kind of non-negotiables. Like the road from Lipoa to the Veterans Highway, to me, I believe is critical before we add the potential for all that development. I feel that it needs to be complete. I don't think any more homes should be built and occupied. They can be built, but not occupied until that road is complete, because look at what happened in Lahaina, and we have only one direction to go. And there's so many different types of disasters that can happen here. And I feel like that we were lucky we escaped the way we did, and it's thanks to the ranch a good deal that they dug those fire breaks. However, and I really think they deserve a lot of credit for that, I feel like we could have been totally devastated in the way that Lahaina was. And I just don't think we should be making more development until we have an additional route out. And I don't see the north-south collector road, Mackay of the highway, ever serving that purpose, because it ends up, first off, it doesn't even get to the end. There is no end, and it's incomplete. It's got buildings in the way, so it can never be really completed. But even if it gets to North Kihei, it would dump onto North Kihei Road, and we need to get farther away. I mean, I'm going to testify next week that I think we need some emergency exits in South Maui through private roads that should be improved to the degree that in an emergency they can be used. And I think that there should be a long-range plan for a bypass sometime. So for me, with him saying, oh, there's alternatives that we can do, like fix Pialani Highway, I don't think so. I don't think there's any remedy on Pialani Highway because it's one road. Maybe we can put a signal synchronization that might make it flow better, possibly, but I haven't seen that work on South Kihei Road where they've done it. So for me, that's a huge difference. And then the other, I'm really keen on the Greenbelt because I really think we need to have integrated into a master plan a horizontal connection between the gulches, if the gulches become areas where people can walk up and down and, get through the community with paths. I think that we also need paths going horizontally, and I just want to reserve that, even though they say that they'll make a whatever you call it, an environment. There's some really good words that Rory added, but to me it wasn't quite good enough. But I did bend in a lot of areas and kind of like give in some, but these are the areas that to me are, I'm looking at it from what I think the community deserves. And I'm totally the advocate for the community and not trying to help development happen. I just want to help.
So we can't really, we have to have a motion, otherwise we can't be talking about this.
Anyway.
Someone needs to make a motion here. And it needs to be someone sitting at the table here. Gary?
I'd like to make a motion to adopt the North Kihei Mauka policies as presented by Randy in her written document this evening.
Second by Mike. Okay, now we can discuss.
Okay, so it does say integrated greenway and open space plan featuring, incorporating, and protecting major drainage ways, but that doesn't address the horizontal connections enough to me, meaning across the mountain, not just up and down the mountain. And I think that a green belt at the top is not too much to ask. It's 200 feet wide. I mean, there probably should be a green belt that goes all the way around the entire development for pathways and whatnot, just for future allowing that to be traversed.
Daniel?
So with regards to the north-south collector road, and you see it being built first before anything else is built?
No, I think that what we wrote here was that, where's the language? Prior to occupancy of any private development, there shall be a 2-lane collector road that connects directly, blah, blah, blah. So prior to occupancy, the development can be happening, but there shouldn't be occupancy and more cars and more people congesting the area until there's an alternate route. I mean, Pialani Highway can't tolerate more. It already is dysfunctional.
Gary?
Just a quick point of clarification. What you're talking about would be the North Kihei Mauka north-south road, not the current north-south collector road.
Yeah.
Because I think we sometimes mix those semantics up.
Right, because you called it the North Kihei Mauka collector road. Just because we want it to be that type of a road.
Jennifer?
I have a quick question. Why stop at Lapoa?
Well, because that's a good question. Because we were just talking about this area of North Kihei Mauka.
But do you see value going further
I
south?
absolutely think there should be a route that goes all the way to South Maui that actually, we don't want South Maui to traverse through Kihei. It really needs to be around Kihei to get out.
Like where the police station is, maybe up there?
Well, I mean, we've talked about a bypass parkway for a long time. I'm not sure the route. We had all these alternates to go up country and this and that. You know, we looked at locations from South Maui, looked at locations from South Kihei. Central Kihei, I mean, then there's the one at Ko'onulu. But none of them have stuck. I still think it's needed, for sure.
The Lipoa connection is what's in the Maui Island plan, and it's also what's in the MRTP plan.
I'm just trying to get what I can get.
Brennan?
Hi, Randy.
But, you know, I think it also really needs to be a county and state cooperative thing. I'm not trying to put this just on the developer. I think that given what happened in Lahaina, they should be looking at solutions before we all get in trouble. Sorry, Vernon.
And that's what I was going to mention, because I was just going to ask you who going to build the road before the first house go up. Who are you asking to build that road?
I'm asking for a public-private partnership. Mm-hmm. And I can see that a developer would have to take the incentive maybe to pull those people together and to figure out how to make it happen. However, it absolutely would have to be, you know, county, state, federal.
Just personally for me, there is highly likely that's where it's going to go. not just on the landowner. It's going to take a few others to carry that load.
Yeah.
And that will happen. You know, the other question is.
It does state that in the policy.
You know, this one you and Rory worked on.
Yeah.
And
It wasn't just me and Rory. It was like so many different people have had input in this. Don't think of it as me and Rory working on something.
because here you have the cultural practitioners. Who you guys gonna work with on that? Or who you had?
You know, there's a stakeholder group, and people need to step forward who are knowledgeable and become participants in the stakeholder group.
Oh, this is the future.
Yeah, this is the future.
So you wrote you put us in the future.
No, I'm including the stakeholders in the very first policy.
Yeah. Okay.
That there needs to be the group of participants who are affected by this area or who have an interest in this area, and they need to be part of the group that determines what the solution and what this community should look like and what are the values and the priorities.
Thank you.
Further discussion? Yes? It was Mike. Mike. Jennifer?
Can we have Rory come up and clarify a couple of the things that are, yeah, are you okay with that?
I mean, it's not me. Yeah, of course.
It's just, there's a lot of reference to what's happening, yeah. And you're on the hot seat, or in the hot seat, and he's the one putting all this stuff on.
So someone needs to make a motion to, needs to suggest that he be a resource person? Is that what you're doing?
Please.
Okay. Any objections? Okay.
Thank you. And I just wanted to clarify. I wasn't saying, I'm not saying we don't need that collector road. We definitely need that collector road. I personally lobbied for it to get it into the South Maui, the sub-area transportation plan. So it's in the state plan. I'm just saying, I think the policies that you guys have and the draft plan that you guys have already worked up, I think are better. and I'll just read you two of them if you don't mind. It's require and undertake transportation system improvements prior to or concurrently with the growth of South Maui region. This is in my letter. Roadway improvements should be plan designed, constructed as generally described in the Kihei sub-area transportation plan. That's the plan I was referring to, or other such future plans. And the next policy says, require development projects Mauka of Pi'ilani Highway to coordinate with the county and state on implementing a new multimodal transportation corridor spanning through South Maui to Central Maui, Mauka of Pi'ilani Highway, as identified in Action 1.14, which I think should be 1.13, and that's where it says prioritize the identification, design, and implement a multimodal transportation corridor from South Maui, Mauka of Pi'ilani, connecting to Veterans Highway. So I think that describes exactly what Randy was saying should happen, is that the developers should be required to work with the government agencies to make this happen. And my point about maybe there might be a way to just mitigate traffic in the short term to get people living up there. It's certainly, we're not going to rely on Pi'ilani Highway for the long term transportation needs. And I think we all agree that there needs to be this Mauka north-south collector. And it's just a matter of when it's going to happen and how the words require that. So I think we're really close on it. And I like the way it's described in what I just read, and I think it reflects exactly what I heard Randy just saying. So that's all. But I think we're a lot. And with the Greenbelt corridor, we're totally supportive of a corridor going north-south, connecting the communities exactly like Randy just said, but she's saying she wants it at the top of the urban growth boundary. I don't know if that's the best place for it or if there's a better place for it somewhere in between, and that's all. I mean, I think, again, it's another item where we agree on the concept. It's just a matter of where it's located in the project. So thanks. Thanks for asking me to clarify. Yeah.
Further discussion? Daniel?
Thanks, Rory. Randy, I wanted to ask, why do you want it, the greenway at the top of the urban growth boundary?
I wanted it at the top because I want another one in the middle. Well, the collector road will be a walkway, bikeway, but I just perceive that if it were designated through the entire area, it seems like it would be a good location just to have that space left open for all different kinds of possible uses, possibly drainage basins, tree nurseries, all different kinds of things as a separate, like have a fire break on the outside of the boundary and then have a green, potentially a green space as a perimeter. It just seems like a good idea to me. And it is an assurance because there's nowhere else is it written that there has to be a connection through that's a green space. And, you know, like I live down here, you know where I live? And there's a green pathway that goes all up and down the ocean there. And it's like one of the most lovely places that goes along the beach from St. Teresa's Church, you know, down to the VFW. It's maybe 200 feet wide, and it's a beautiful place. And I just think that it would be good. I just really want this area to be, have a quality of life that is healthy for people. They can walk long distances, they can get everywhere, they can, and I feel like it just ensures that to me by stating that requirement. And I don't really see what a big deal it is because that growth boundary, I mean, how vague is that thing? How big is this space? Who knows? And if you come in 200 feet, how much of it, it's 600 acres already. So I don't think it hurts anything, put it that way. And it just allows for future. You know, who knows, maybe a future, you know, anything, a rail line, anything that is just allocating space. Maybe I'm Pollyanna, I don't know. But that, it occurs to me as something that's not that hard to accommodate.
Mike?
Yeah, I agree that when I hear that word concurrent, I think of our 98 plan of the development concurrent with infrastructure, and we see it doesn't happen. It's like, okay, just let a developer, let's build something, then we'll get that infrastructure in later, and it never happens. So I think this policy that Randy has presented here can't start occupying the development until the road is built. It has to be done that way. Otherwise, we're going to just be stuck with the same situation. We'll just start the developing, and we'll start more and more, and then you won't get the infrastructure in probably ever. I mean, just like we never got the north-south collector road in. So concurrent makes me nervous. Get the road in and open and functioning before you start moving people in. Mahalo.
You know, I wanted to make a comment. Thanks, Mike. Being on the design review committee for Kihei for, I don't know, 10 years or something, I see that happening all the time. I see development go in without the infrastructure. People wiggle around it. And it's really not healthy. We need to be able to walk places. We need to be able to have shade. We need to be able to have an environment that is conducive to a community. So, and I think a road like that, I mean, our collector road, if it were complete, it's really a great asset. Roads set the tone for communities.
Carrie?
Hi, Randy.
Hi, Gary.
So I'm going to try to super summarize policy 1 and 2 because I think they're so important to the rest of the policies that follow. The way that I kind of read this document and kind of wrap my mind around this is a really amazing opportunity for the community and all the stakeholders, whether they're the landowners, the developers, the the community activists, the people that may in fact sometime live up there in the North Kihei Mauka, to come together and really visualize this area and try to come up with a way to really make this an amazing opportunity. And the output of that group is really a comprehensive, which is the policy 2, is a comprehensive plan. So the way I read this is not trying to oversteer too much of what the final product's going to look like, but make sure that there's a real community process in place for this area to actually have an opportunity to flourish and create a viable community out of it. And of course, there's a few, again, as the way I read this, there's a few key absolutes that are really important, and one of them would be the North Kihei Mauka collector road, and that's and I think everybody that's looked at that visualized that kind of going down the middle with a parkway that would be what we had all kind of hoped someday, but we all probably realize isn't going to happen, the North-South collector road, because we've been teased with tiny bits of it that we know what it could look like, but we know now that it'll probably never happen in a way we really want to see it. And so, and the last policy of this document, I think, which is really, maybe it's because it's my soapbox, but it really is building a Kama'aina community that's affordable for a large percentage of the people. And I know just from my conversations with Rory that, I know that that's the intent, I think, of their group. I think it's the intent of this group. I think it's the intent of the island to try to create as much affordable housing up there, mixed in with the small amount of commercial that makes sense, the small amount of the right amount of multifamily, but let the community figure all that stuff out. And I think these 6 policies, I think, gives us the tools and an incentive to do that. So I thank you for your work. I thank Rory for his group's participation and cooperation. I think it's an amazing example, and all the people that you guys have both worked with to bring us to this particular point. So I just want to thank you and share with the group a little of what I see this opportunity to be.
Thank you.
More discussion? Daniel?
It seems like the ranch and you folks are pretty close, except for just a couple areas. Just a thought, maybe would it be worthwhile to re-meet and see if you can get even closer?
No, we have done enough of that. We've gotten as close as we can get.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead.
Hello. I don't know, I feel like we've gone so far past the limit, and trying to correct things now is the hard part. It seems like we're always butting heads for people like me who are trying to do restoration to Malamara wetlands, the Kakai, and to really become familiar with these areas, try to understand these areas, not just to live in these areas, to be an islander, I think about the rivers that are going to be impacted by these things. Our dry forest is pretty much gone. Yeah. Cultural sites, and I hear no talk about these things, right? Yeah, I just want to say that.
Are we ready to go to decision on, on these 6 policies? So as I understand it, Jennifer, you have to recuse yourself. Okay. I'll just put this out there anyway. Are there any objections to the 6 policies proposed? Okay, I find we have adopted these 6 policies. We have 3 minutes left. Can we look at the policy language that we requested that the planning department put together for us? It says at the top, new policy language requested by South Maui Cpac. Okay, there's a lot of them here. I guess we won't get through all of them. So I don't remember, are these things where we were requesting text, or did we actually decide to adopt these things?
These were language requests made during meetings or where people said they wanted to go back to it later. So it's kind of a combination. The only 2 that are specifically being recommended by the planning department are down below the policy recommendations right there. The other ones are more, if you would like to adopt them, they are language you guys kind of came up with in different points in different ways.
Okay, so we do need to process them individually. Okay, let's see how far we get. Well, actually, we're at 8:29. So what's the feeling of the meeting? Should we? Okay. Should we adjourn? Okay. Okay. So next meeting we will try to get through the policies and hopefully get through the actions too, at least some of the actions. So closing the Cpac meeting at 8:29 p.m.